All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. I'm extremely humbled, honored, grateful, and very excited as this has been, I think, 2 or 3 months in the making, give or take. We are joined today with the one and only Ryan Bledsoe, whose father is also Chris Bledsoe, of course, from the quite well known Bledsoe family. And I do not mean to put any words in any of their mouths, and I do not mean to speak on behalf of them, which is why we have Ryan here with us in the sense that your family, Ryan, has experienced many, many very intriguing, I guess you could say, I don't want to use the word phenomenon, but you could say experiences that are quite unique to your family in particular compared to others. But before we delve into that, thank you so much for coming on and how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me. That's quite the introduction there. I really appreciate that.
Well, as we said before we started recording, I want to thank you so much because you speaking out and starting up your Twitter and social media and your of course your father speaking out as well has also motivated me essentially to say like, listen, I don't care what the naysayers may or are going to say. In some cases, the naysayers don't show up at all, which I guess is good at times. But to the point where it's like, listen, if I experience something, it may be a little bit different for somebody else, or they may not believe me. But if there's even one person out there that can relate, then let's put this information out there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the whole reason I'm telling my life story on the internet is so it could basically get out ahead of all these narratives out there that are just trying to scare everybody, to death. I genuinely believe that just even telling my story could help people have hope for a more positive future because that's what it's all about.
Right, I couldn't agree more. And before we delve into the intricacies and the details of all of this, would you be willing to give us a general summary on what you've experienced, if anything, growing up with obviously with your father and with your mother and siblings and all of that, and even what the rest of your family's experienced, any significant events in particular?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want me to go all the way back to the beginning?
Please, that'd be great if you'd be all right with that.
Yeah, so in 2007, it was January 8th. My dad, Chris Bledsoe, and my oldest brother, Chris Jr., and three of their, I guess you could say, coworkers or contractors or what have you, went fishing on the Cape Fear River. And that night changed our lives forever because what they saw was just it was mind blowing. I don't know how long I have to tell the entire story. It's a very long story, but I've covered it in great length on my show, Bledsoe Said So. But essentially, what happened was they had contact with beings of light that night on the river. They came down in these big glowing balls of light. They basically, if I could kind of like back up for a bit, my dad walked away from the group, walked up this trail. Long story, skimming over details here. They're out in the woods fishing. And my dad goes to the top of the hill and he sees these two big orange, look like balls of fire on the horizon, like what you would see the size of the sun.
Mm.
And then a third one shoots up. He sees that. He hikes back down the trail. He sees my brother. My brother had been in the woods for maybe like 2 hours, face to face with these 3 to 4 foot tall entities. They're all freaking out. This whole encounter was maybe like 4 hours. My dad ended up being missing. They discovered that later in the investigation. It turns out with him walking up the trail and then walking back, he actually was taken. He had 4 hours of missing time. He didn't connect that in his head. This was '07. He didn't have a cell phone at the time to just, check his phone. He was panicked anyway. Gets back to the guys. By the time my dad gets back, then my brother is released from these entities in the woods. And then one of the guys shouts, "Look," and they look up and there's 8 to 9 of these balls of white light in the sky. They look like they were stars at first, and then they start scrambling around and they shoot down to the other side of the river. My brother told me two of them. I always thought it was one of them, but I always say one or two. I wasn't there,
So
but one
sorry,
or two of them.
just to clarify, sorry, brother, before you go on. So what we have are balls of fire or light in the sky, in addition to 3 to 4 foot bipedal humanoid beings on the ground, or
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't typically use the word humanoid. I mean, I
sure.
guess you could describe them that way. They did appear to have like head, arms, legs, but yeah, and they were there in the woods in person, walking around, and then after they disappeared, the lights shut down on the other side of the river. They're all freaking out. They get in the truck. They all drive home, drop everybody off. I'm kind of skipping over a lot of details here because it's an incredibly long and very intricate story.
No problem.
And when they get home to our house, my dad sees one of those entities in our backyard, and it tells him, "We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help you." Later in his hypnotic regression that was facilitated through the Discovery Channel and MUFON, he was able to recall his memories interacting with those entities in that 4 hours of missing time. And they had taken him aboard their vessel, which seemingly was made of light. And when he was on the inside, they basically told him all kinds of things, who they are, where they come from, what they're doing here, what their purpose is for humanity. Essentially, they communicated to him that they are the guardians of life. They created us. They serve nature. They tend to creation like a garden. And they have the ability to basically guide souls, is what they communicated. They orchestrate the destiny of souls, and they kind of push you on your path to do what you need to do. And it was communicated that they took my dad's soul from another place, put it here so that he could, live this story and go tell it. And yeah, I mean, it's wild.
Does that and thank you so much for even giving a general summary of what occurred there. Does that speak to you, Ryan, personally, with respects to the contemplation of these physical bodies, or organic bodies, if you will, biological ones, acting or serving as containers of sorts? Does that add any credence, in your opinion, to that? Have you ever thought of it that way, based on what your father was told from these beings?
Now, when you say biological containers, do you mean us, or do you mean like alien entities?
What I'm alluding to specifically, or referring to, is the idea that our soul, whatever comprises that, is something separate from this physical body, shell, container, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we have an eternal consciousness that exists infinitely in a different realm. And occasionally, when that consciousness decides there's a few things it wants to figure out or learn, it comes to this realm, born into a little body, lives here, doesn't really know where it came from or why it's here, or if there even is anywhere else. And yeah, it's all that ancient karma stuff, all that mystical stuff about the soul, and this reality being a fractal illusion of the infinite spiritual world. That's essentially what they communicated to my father was true. All of the ancient mystical secrets of Egypt.
Right. So would this speak to as well I really appreciate that you brought up the word specifically fractalized, the fractalized shards of light, if you will, based on the demiurge and the Gnostic texts. Would this fall in line even vaguely or loosely with that?
Yeah, I mean, I've loved studying the Gnostic text, but I like to go back a little older than that, and look to the mystical traditions of even older than when the Gnostic sources were written, right on back to Egypt and the Hermetic tablets, all that stuff that like your modern secret societies are talking about, your Freemasons, your Rosicrucians, your Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, these people who have these clubs, and they're so important, and they have all these secrets. Well, really, it can all be found right there on the internet. It's just the Hermetic tablets. It's the 7 laws of reality. Anybody can go Google the 7 Hermetic laws, and that's the ancient truth that they've been hoarding all these years. And it's essentially, that's what my intuition tells me. This is older than Gnosticism. This informed Gnosticism for anybody who's follows these lineages of these mystical schools being formed throughout the centuries or the millennia or what have you. But yeah, so Gnosticism is like the Greek spin on what I'm referring to, which is Hermeticism, an even older, probably eternal tradition that exists in every cycle.
Right. And I appreciate that answer, because to that point, would you say, in your opinion, Ryan, your personal opinion and observation of just, living your life and all of that, irregardless and separate of your respective family members, would you say that what you find in day-to-day society and life are systems or apparatuses that are put in place under the guise of, entertainment, under the guise of quote unquote progress, in order to prevent us from, say, reading and looking into those hermetic principles and things of the sort?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a game, and the game is rigged. It's like, how can you really learn a lesson if the lesson isn't even challenging? You know what I mean? Or if we could relate it to pop culture, that's one thing I think that resonates with 99% of the people in the world. Everybody's seen a movie or two in their life. If we were to just imagine for a second that this were sorry, I'm glitching. This reality is like the Matrix, right? Let's just assume. And which is essentially what the Gnostics, the Hermetics, and other traditions were referring to. That's this big secret, right? That we're in this fractal illusion.
Right.
Well, the Matrix isn't going to take itself down. It's not going to reveal its tricks. It's not gonna tell you the purpose of the game. It's gonna keep you locked in the game, and it's kind of up to each and every one of us to figure out what it is we're really doing here. Why are we so special? The federal agents, the systems, the militaries of the world, the politicians, even the major religious centers. Hate to break it to people, but they're controlled too. They're not going to reveal how they're lying to you. They're not going to reveal how they're tricking to you, because to them that'd probably be no fun, But yes, I agree that it's all pretty much rigged to make us sick, stupid, docile, lazy idiots who have no clue what is even animating this reality in the first place. I mean, our food is toxic. We're constantly being pushed pharmaceuticals, big pharma, big agriculture. They're spraying the crops. I don't even know if this is a conspiracy show, but I'm just giving my, take on the answer here.
I don't even know myself if my show's a conspiracy show. I don't. I'm not sure. I just ask questions.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I don't know if the audience is gonna be like, "Whoa, this guy's saying some wild stuff."
No,
but
it's definitely not that. No.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much common sense at this point that the whole game is rigged against us. But the question is why? Because they don't want us to evolve. They don't want us to figure out that in the age of Aquarius, the next big leap for human consciousness is exploring the mysteries of psychic perception and psychic revelation, which is coming.
Right. And I want to thank you for even bringing that up, because that actually takes me to my next question. Talk about coincidences, flukes, or synchronicities, as they say, which is that this concept or idea that there seems to be such a deep and stigmatized, dogmatized, you name it, or actually, no, there seems to be generally throughout the world on the surface of this planet a societal standard that if one does not have a 9 to 5, for example, it sort of is looked at or ridiculed or sort of questioned as, well, okay, either, I'm just listing a few options here. A, that person is lazy. B, that person is financially very, very financially comfortable. C, they're just, they're a mess. And no one ever seems to consider the possibility that it may in fact be the total inverse or opposite of all or one of those points, which is that individuals are taking time to understand themselves and to realize that one does not particularly need to rely on a system which embodies smaller humans to, I guess you could say, invariably force the rest of us to do things like pay taxes and all of this. It's based on an ideological intent that they keep telling us to feed into, while they simultaneously tell us to not apply it in our spare time. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you're saying some people just don't function within a system.
Right, exactly. And this concept of, for example, say you and I, Ryan, we call into a 9 to 5 work in which we metaphorically work at, and we say, hey, in this example, we want to take a week off, and both of our family members or friends respectively ask us why. And you and I both say, well, we want to, take some time to think about a particular topic or subject and maybe write some things down, extrapolate. Those things take time. And it's interesting because it seems that the entire matrix, if you will, as you mentioned, is designed to, sort of like Plato's allegory of the cave, to not give us that time to realize that we can break out of this without the reliance of a superstructure system.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say I have a hard time functioning within a system, but then again, I mean, I've lived a crazy life that's been very dramatic, very not normal. So, I mean, it just drives me nuts going to a normal 9 to 5. And I imagine there's a lot of people out there like that who don't thrive necessarily in a structure, like a job and paying taxes and things like that. I think that's very reasonable to assume.
Right. And speaking of as you say here, not to take you out of context, crazy experiences, what's it like, presuming I have this correct, and if I'm wrong, please correct me in real time. What's it like having the military or certain bodies of the government or certain agencies of the United States federal government come approach your family? And I believe there was a tweet that you had put out a handful of months ago, which was that certain members of your family were handed certain metallurgies or rocks, if I'm not mistaken, and were asked to see if you felt anything when holding them. Again, please correct me if I'm off here, but could you explain and elaborate on that particular instance, if that would be all right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it was cool at the time, when you're in your early 20s, even in your late teens. I mean, they started coming when I was 15. Super cool at the time.
Could I ask which agency or branch of military, or is that too specific?
No, I mean, I'm very open about it. NASA, CIA, even DIA, and others. Like my dad's had some brush-ins with some DARPA folks and NSA, other intelligence agencies from other countries.
Is it
Uh,
as simple as they just knock on the door or give you guys a phone call?
Sometimes, yeah, no. Sometimes they just knock on the door. That's actually the first person who came to our property and identified himself as an employee of one of these government programs was NASA. It was in 2009. Just knocked on the door, or he rang the doorbell and answered the door, and he had a NASA laminate on his shirt. And yes, sometimes they just show up. Sometimes they call and they say, "I'd like to come." Sometimes we're kind of like sneakily introduced to them through other mutual contacts, and it's just it's like ordinary life. I mean, a friend of this guy in the CIA calls this other CIA guy and they want to come over, or we have another friend who's extremely connected in the political world or in the Wall Street world, and then behind the scenes they'll pull some strings and then get some director of some CIA division to want to meet us. It's just crazy stuff like that, a
And
lot
before
of clandestine type stuff.
Right, okay. And before, sorry, forgive me. Before we go into the actual the premise of my question, which was the metallurgy and all of that, what do they usually say, these NASA type individuals or intel guys, after they ring the doorbell? Is it after, say, you answer the door? What's usually what's the opening line, if I may ask?
I mean, usually they identify who they are. They'll flash their laminate, or sometimes it's not usually a badge like you see in the movies. It's this little laminated thing that's sometimes in a pouch or in a briefcase or whatever. They're super chill about it. It's not like they show up in suits and sunglasses and all that. I mean, normal guys, collared shirts,
Right.
sometimes not. Just ordinary people, or they appear to be. And what was the other part of that question? You said, what's it like when they present
The
themselves?
what's usually the opening sentence after you open the door and say, "Hi, how are you?" or "Who are you?" Do they say, "I'm from NASA and I'd like to ask you specific questions"? What does it usually lead into?
I mean, honestly, like I couldn't tell you every single opening sentence for every agent I've ever met. I mean, since I was 15 years old, but
Right.
it's usually just conversation. They come in right off the bat. They tell us they believe us and that it's the story that has to get out to the world, and it's so important and this and that and the other. But then they tell us also, in another breath, that we're being bugged and we're being tapped and we'll always be monitored for the rest of our lives, and all this kinds of fantastical bullcrap to I don't know, maybe get us not to go out and speak. I don't know, maybe put it in our heads. But
Mm.
yeah, and a lot of them have been super nice in the private, and then in public they say things differently about us, and that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway,
That must be,
um
if I'm being completely down to earth and real with you from my personal perspective, that must be like it's like someone coming to your home, being like a journalist coming to your home, being all nice and this and that, and then they spend a week at your house. Say they come in every day from 9 to 5, for example. Then they write their article a month later, it goes out, and you find out that they've written a terrible piece on you after you've been so kind to them. If that would be a relatable example.
yeah, well, that's exactly what happened with the documentary. They straight up did not present us in the way that we were told we would be presented. But back to the metallurgy question, it wasn't a rock. It was a piece of material that appeared in this place in New Mexico that they've codenamed the gifting field. And it seems to be this mystical little spot where these entities will materialize technologies just so the scientists of today can study them and have breakthroughs. And now you have the military who want to get their greedy, very power hungry, and also money hungry hands on that and weaponize these technologies. That kind of stuff is going on behind the scenes, I'm sure. But The pieces of metal that I held were from that field, from that weird little spot in New Mexico. And when I held both pieces in my hand, I felt electricity run through my body. I apologize. I might be coughing and sniffling a lot. I have been struggling with a cold this week.
No problem, man. I want to just make it clear to the audience as well too that I want to thank Ryan for coming on. He mentioned yesterday he wasn't feeling so well, so please, not a problem, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And when I held these metals, it sent this like electricity through my body. And this guy in particular was with the NRO, which was a joint operation between the CIA, Air Force Intelligence, and NASA. He tested every member of my family, even tested my wife, who at the time we weren't married yet, but she was around, put it in her hand. She didn't feel any of the energy, but then all the 6 members of my family, my 2 brothers, my sister, my mom, my dad, we all felt this electrical current. My dad felt it very powerfully, way more powerful than any of us. And blew this guy's mind. He looked at my dad and he said, "Why you?" And my dad's like, "What do you mean? I don't understand what's happening. Like, I don't understand this energy or whatever, in the
Right.
moment." And he said, "I've only seen that happen to 3 other people before. And this is confirmation to me that you have had close interactions with entities."
Wow, 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 wow. And this particular shock, jolt, electric or electromagnetic pulse, if you will, can I ask where you feel it specifically? And I ask because some people claim that they have felt similar type, not to the extent in which your family and yourself experience, but similar type phenomenon where some say, it's a jolt down the spine, others say it's a jolt down the head, or could you be a little more specific as to where you feel the jolt, or is it kind of just everywhere?
Well, it wasn't a jolt. It was like a very gentle, pleasant current of electrical energy running through my hands and through my arms, kind of like an energy chain. It was like if you could imagine you're looking at a visual of a human body, like you always see those musculature diagrams, you know,
Yep.
and just visualize the arms,
Right.
and then coming up from your hands, up your arm, and then around your shoulders, and then back out through the other arm. That's how I felt it. It was just this energy flowing through my arms, but it wasn't painful. It wasn't a jolt. It was a very steady current until I let go of these pieces. It didn't shock me. It didn't literally shock me like electricity, but it was electric. It was like magnetism or energy or something inside of my body. I can't really describe it, but it was real enough to get the attention of this very high level member of the Department of Defense, who then went and briefed some of the Pentagon officials on our family. Then he sent us a letter in the mail of the official presidential seal of Camp David, I guess implying that he had briefed Barack Obama on us. I don't know.
Wow, I see. Okay. And speaking of that, I did want to share for those that are going to be watching this visually a tweet that you put out here a little while back, which was the beings told my dad the triangle on their chest represents the Trinity, the Father, the Mother, and the Son. Would this be, I mean, first off, wow, that's incredible because when I look at this, I mean, it seems to resemble so much of what others claim to experience more mentally or more in a dream state, if you will, whereas you guys and your family seem to have experienced much more in the material, the tangible, the physical, whatever one would like to call it. Would this be a fairly accurate depiction and illustration of the beings in which your father encountered? And when they were speaking to him, was this what one could call tele telekinetic or telekinesis or telepathic?
Well, yeah, I mean, my dad actually painted that. That's probably as close as we can get to describing the entity,
Wow.
unless like my brother or myself, who eventually saw one later in my bedroom. Yeah, I mean, that's it. They even had the triangle on their chest, and that's what they said it represented: the Father, the Mother, and the Son. That all of the how can I say this? The biggest secret hidden from mankind, and this is going to go over your audience's head. That's totally okay. I'm not here to like ask people to support me or believe me. I'm just saying, speaking my truth. But the biggest secret
That's why you're here,
hidden,
man. Please.
right? Absolutely, man. The biggest secret hidden from mankind, hidden from us by the Vatican, by the powers that be, whoever people believe is the boogeyman. There is a boogeyman. It's the fact that there is a goddess. There is a female side to divinity. If we imagine this little realm that we live in being a tiny little dramatic mirror image of the higher spiritual realms, think about it. For a child to be born, it has to be through the physical union of a male and a female. And that's true in the animal kingdom. That's technically true in the plant kingdom. Everywhere in nature that you see life with consciousness, there's some sort of masculine and feminine dance, if you will, for that third thing, that third piece of the triangle, the child, to be born. And remember, this realm is a mirror image of the higher realm. The spiritual realm is just like this one, in the sense that there has to be the union of the feminine and the masculine forces to create life or consciousness or spirit or what have you. And that's the secret. That's what's been repressed. That's why mankind is so messed up right now, is because they don't even know that there is a feminine aspect of the divine. I mean, sure, you have people do, and they get branded as like new age or hippie or whatever, but that's it. I mean, the female entity that my father experienced is what caused the CIA to swarm my family like flies, to be knocking on our door, not the NASA guy, that was years before, but the female entity, or as they call her, the goddess, the lady, whatever. They're very terrified of her because they're very terrified of what she's planning. They don't just communicate with these entities like everybody believes. Everyone has these bobo conspiracy theories that the government has alien bodies and they have this whole galactic federation and all this crap. That's not true. What's really going on here is they are getting reports of these entities. They're tracking them. They're shaking down experiencers. They're trying to get to the bottom of what these entities want, which now they know. And it is to teach humanity how to evolve to the next level and accept and embrace the divine feminine energy, which is love, compassion, mercy, all that shit that Jesus talked about, all that lovey-dovey stuff. That's the secret of that is that's really the energy of the divine mother, or people could call her the goddess or whatever.
I appreciate you bringing this up so much. There's a couple things, if it's all right, I'd like to unpack about what you said there. I've been saying, whether it's on my Patreon or on the public side of the show, but more so on my members' side, is that I firmly, based on my own personal research, even a lot of research that I don't put out even for even publicly, is that there seems to be a very strong and potentially deliberate attempt to suppress the divine feminine, archetypally, metaphysically, literally, philosophically, ontologically, you name it. Would you, based on your experiences and your own research and all of this, would you be in concurrence with that? And not just recently, I'm talking in terms of many thousands of years going back to, as they say, allegedly the Atlantean era. There's a deliberate suppression over a prolonged period of time to suppress the divine feminine.
I mean, yeah, you tell me, man. Women have only had rights for like 100 years. As sad as that sounds. And it's just true at every level of history that it's always been like, like man is like the king and women are his property and this and all that other bullshit. And people have this hyper masculine. And look, I'm not sitting here trying to spew like third wave feminism. I don't give a shit about any of that toxic, like hating on masculine energy.
There's a difference, right?
There's a huge difference. Yeah. What I'm talking about is a balance of energies. You know what I'm saying? Like both energies are equally sacred, equally important, and equally necessary for life to thrive. But there's a dark group at the top of humanity who is suppressing one half of this equation so that we won't reach our full potential. And to circle back to that question, yes, I do believe that this has been a concerted effort since before we even understood what society was, back to the times of maybe even like Babylon.
Right.
And think about it, there's no reference in the Holy Bible. I think the Holy Bible is probably the most esoteric text of all time. I'm not a Bible thumper. I'm not telling people to literally read the Bible and go to church. I'm just saying if people have the eyes for esoteric knowledge, secrets of the ancients, the Bible's got some really cool stories that really have a dual meaning. And if people will pay attention, there's not one quote or one verse in the entire book, all 66 books. There's not one quote that says Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. Yet we all just know that for some reason. We all just believe that, right? Why is that?
Interesting. See, I didn't know that myself, if I'm being brutally honest with you and the audience. Right. Very good point.
It's because this is the concept that's been spun by the Vatican. They have all these doctrines and these rules that we're supposed to live by. And then what do? They changed the The divine mother aspect of creation, the goddess side. I know people get freaked out by the big G word. They don't like the God word. Get over it. There's like thousands of words out there, and we can, not be harmed by them. Anyway,
You're speaking too much to a large attachment to verbiage and labels rather than what they actually mean.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
you.
I think people get way too attached to words and exactly what it's like this trap in their brain. They
Right.
hear certain words and it offends them and it causes them to freak out. But anyway, I'm addressing the audience when I say those things, by the way. I'm not
I
telling
got
you
you.
to
No,
go.
I got you.
Yeah. But anyway, they what they did was they turned the goddess aspect of divinity into the Holy Spirit. It's just this disembodied ghost. Nobody knows its identity. It's just this force that's probably genderless, according to what they describe. And then they took that and they rebranded this little, I guess she was like 13 or 14-year-old kid named Mary, and said basically she's a human. We're supposed to worship her. She's the mother of God, but she's also like this little child, and all she's really known for and all she's really special for is being a virgin that was impregnated by God. You see, like how fucked up it is
Mm.
what they did to reality? They really destroyed any inkling of understanding for the last 2,000 years of what's really created us, of what's really behind the scenes, pulling the strings, uh, creating souls and manifesting this realm in the first place.
This takes me
They
to the question. Sorry, please.
I was just going to say, to close that out, they took this mother goddess and they turned her into a little kid, and they said worship this little virgin girl who, it's just really
Right.
messed up.
Well, this speaks to me to your point very strongly and avidly of the concept of, they always say, and it's been said that history's written by the winners. Now,
Mm-hmm.
my whole thing is, okay, where is the perspective of history from that of the losers? Well, again, it's been either covered up or because, by definition, because they lost, there was no one remaining to tell their perspective of events that occurred. So it's kind of like nobody seems to ask that. And I don't mean to specifically point at the Vatican. I speak to any, not just religious, but ideological structure of any kind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying. I like to particularly pick on the Vatican because they are the ones who killed the guy who was bringing a lot of these like Egyptian mystery secrets and Gnostic secrets to the world, and then totally changed the story, and then enslaved modern society to believe if you don't take it exactly their way, you'll just burn in hell forever. No big deal. Oh, by the way, you have like 70, 75 years to figure it out. You get one chance. That's basically what they perpetrated on humanity for the last 2,000 years, and it makes me sick.
I couldn't agree with you more in that regard. When you put it that way, in pure, as a matter of fact, I would dare to say that the frustration that seems to be deriving from those that seem to take offense to that is not so much the justification on the surface is, oh, you're disrespecting our belief system. Well, it's like, is it not the purpose of a larger collective belief system to not necessarily agree, but to be open to understanding others' views? And it kind of becomes like, it's interesting how it's don't you dare ever question God's views in any regard, but at the same time, it's you have to take offense the second somebody goes out of the. You see what I'm saying? It's very contradictory. It's very,
Yeah,
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 conflictual. Yeah,
it's all these boxes. We got all these boxes that people's minds are trapped in, and
right.
my whole thing is just get rid of the box, throw it away. It doesn't really matter what people know. It doesn't matter if people believe in uh, whatever name they want to call their God. They're wrong anyway, because the truth is God has no name. God is this unfathomable force of all these cosmic energies that's animating this reality, and we're sitting here twiddling our thumbs really trying to understand it, and then over time we're killing each other because we think we got to figure it out better you know
Right.
and by the way, and then you have the government powers, the CIA, the DARPA, the NASA, the NRO, the 1%, the bankers who really pull the strings of the militaries around the globe. They're putting it out in all the Hollywood programming. They're getting their federal agents to go on talk shows now, and they're calling it disclosure, and they're tricking everybody to believe there is no higher power. It's aliens, dummies, and they want to come eat you and kill you. And that's why we got to militarize and keep putting out all this garbage about them jamming our sensors and all this crap.
Well, it's interesting you bring this up because I said this to a friend earlier today, actually, who was going to go watch the film called Nope. The what was his name? Jordan Peele's film there.
Mm-hmm.
I said to my friend, I said, if you could kindly let me know, I'm sure from a purely entertainment perspective, it's probably going to be pretty cool. But from a psychological perspective, to me, just seeing the trailer alone, to me, speaks to the concept of the military media complex insinuating a
Hmm.
fear angle there. Basically, you always have to fear, anything that comes, that's non-human related, that seems to be the traditional UAP UFO perspective. Would you be in agreement with that? Because I mean, just not to criticize the film for its entertainment value, but from a psychological angle, it looks to me like, holy crap, if that's not trying to subconsciously scare people for what may come, I don't know what will or does.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it yet, so I really have no clue what it's about, other than it's
Right.
supposedly about aliens. But obviously, it's a horror film. I would say it's a mix of that, plus, Hollywood just gets their rocks off, making things dark and negative and scary. And like that's okay as long as people are wise enough to realize it's just fiction. There's no
Mm,
element. There's no. These people aren't like revealing deep truths to you about aliens. I don't. At least I don't have faith that they are. I haven't seen the movie yet.
right.
But yeah, no, I totally agree. Anything when it comes to um aliens is pretty much always spun a particular way for the audience to receive it in their subconscious mind, whether they know it or not.
Right. Right.
It's programming.
Exactly, exactly. Now, with that said, I know we only have about 10, 15 minutes left, and I really want to thank you, man, for coming on truly. So I just have
Oh,
two.
dude, it's no problem. I'm sorry it took so long to work out, but I'm just
No,
a busy guy. But
no worries at all, man. Trust me, I know how busy you guys are, so it's not an issue at all. So one thing I did want to ask before moving on to the final question, which was, and I want to be clear, the same way that I ask everyone else that comes on the show, this is not to, I don't mean any disrespect, I don't mean any negative connotation or rhetoric here, but just curious and genuine curiosity. You seem to at least allude earlier that you don't believe in the potential, I guess you could say, existence of a secret space program or things like this. And I do not mean to put words in your mouth.
no,
If
it's okay. I'm open
if
book, man.
well, if so, why or why not? And I'm just genuinely curious. Is it some people have said the government's far too disorganized to establish something like this. That some others say that, well, if
That's
it
definitely true.
some
They're
others,
they're not
yeah,
as Hollywood as people think.
right. So some others say as well that, some others say, to play devil's advocate to that, it's possible decades ago the scuttling off of these technologies to private aerospace in corporations may have allowed for a small coalition of spacefaring humans to leave the planet. What do you think in that regard?
I don't believe a single shred of it. I don't, not even an ounce of my consciousness entertains any of that whatsoever. And my experience just compels me to um, live in that. I'm sorry, I'm having a little, I don't have any tissues. I'm going to fight this one.
Oh, sorry, man.
I
Hold
had to
on.
sneeze for a second. I'm sorry. I'm good. I'm good now. That's what that was, like a little congestion attack. But anyway, yeah, I don't believe that one bit. As a matter of fact, the entities, the beings, or the guardians, what have you, um, showed my dad that the military powers of the world are terrified of them. They, occasionally will launch rockets or whatever at them, and they'll just zap them down. And basically told my dad that they're completely powerless. They're terrified. Um, and then on top of that, essentially the beings had communicated to my dad that they don't allow any sort of major weaponization of these military powers. Like the reason the nukes started going underground for testing was because of these beings. And when my dad was actually taken on a full private tour of mission control at Cape Canaveral, the same guy I was talking about earlier, Timothy Taylor, he's this NRO guy. There's like books written about him and his whole career in this big secret society in the Department of Defense, the Invisible College. That's the guy who had put the medals in my hand in my bedroom. But anyway, he took my dad on a private tour through mission control, showed him some classified videos, and it was a quote, a dummy warhead being launched towards our atmosphere in an orb or a big ball of light or whatever people want to call it. Don't get lost on the words. It was an anomalous phenomenon of light.
Sure.
Swirled around this dummy warhead, hit it with a few zaps, and it tumbled down and landed in the ocean. And this guy, Tim, said, "Why do you think they would do that, Chris?" And my dad said, "Well, they knew that you had real warheads on there and they don't like you sending weapons out to space. They're not going to allow you to do that." And the guy said, Yeah, that's exactly it.
Right. And sorry, his name again was
Tim Taylor.
Tim Taylor. Okay.
He's just one of many guys that people can go Google that we've brushed shoulders with in this lifelong career of them poking and prodding us because of our experiences. And yeah, I don't believe, because of my experiences, because of
Right.
who I know, what I've seen, and seeing these entities in various forms over thousands of times in my lifetime since I was 13 years old. I'll be 29 next week. So anybody does the math, it's coming up on 16 years. Um, I've
Happy
seen
belated, by
thousands.
the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Point being, I don't believe the stuff that I read on the internet.
Mm.
Um, it's just, it's all propaganda. It's completely against what I have actually witnessed in my environment growing up since childhood,
Would
meeting directors of CIA programs and this and that and the other.
right. Would you be and I ask just to play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Would you be open to, if you received some type of standard of evidence or data, a piece of data of some kind, say, your family was approached with this, and would you believe that a potential breakaway event occurred at some point in Earth's, in our modern human history, so to speak? And I ask this specifically because I myself don't know where I stand on this, but this idea that when Mr. Neil Armstrong and Mr. Aldrin landed on the moon, there was allegedly a fleet that surrounded them, and I don't know to what extent that is true or not. There's some veterans that went on the record that claimed it was the case, although they did admit they themselves were obviously not there. Where do you stand in that regard? Just curious.
My advice, my friend, is don't believe anything you hear from the military
Mm,
about aliens and extra sensory perception and conscious. Well, I would believe the psychic stuff. A lot of that is true. But when it comes to aliens, I wouldn't believe a shred of it. My dad has met Bill Tompkins, the guy who supposedly built the ships for the space program.
mm.
Do you know who I'm talking
Will
about? He
I was referring to some of his. I was thinking actually, sorry, of some of his illustrations in my head as I was describing it. William Tompkins, correct? Right.
Yep, and he sat there at a little Starbucks. Uh, I don't know what you call it, patio seating
Sure.
outside.
Yeah.
My dad, Tom DeLong, the Blink 182 guy,
Yep.
and Bill Tompkins, and they sat there and they tried to shop my dad. Shop him as in win him over. And he sat there and he told my dad that Bill Clinton is a 9 foot tall reptilian. He eats little girls. They slit their throat. They drink the blood and suck the life force out of their body. They zap us with these machines when we die so that they create this little hologram of a light. And when our consciousness goes to it, they reincarnate us back over. And the big secret that the government's been hiding everybody is that we're a cattle farm for lizards that live in caves, and the queen and the presidents are lizards. By the way, that's the same shit that everybody's reading online. So if
Right.
they're saying it, and they're meeting my dad, who he is, been studied by the CIA and NASA and all this shit, and then he's meeting this guy and he's going to start spouting all this mumbo jumbo. It's obviously not true. It's an agenda. It's these officers have this compartmentalized agenda to spew a certain story, like actors, to trick the world.
Mm.
I don't believe a shred of it. I don't believe any bit of it. And I'm not saying that people don't have to, but you asked the question, am I
Yeah.
open to it? No, sir.
Wow. Well, honestly, man, I want to thank you because I think this speaks to the. See, here's the thing, and I'll tell you right now, and very respectfully on my end, I'm truly 50-50, and I appreciate you giving insight into that because that helps me sort of take on a personal level my own
Yeah,
interpretation of that.
sure.
And I want to also say to the audience as well, for those either watching on YouTube or listening via audio, these I think this is how not to use myself as an example, but I think this is how conversation should go, particularly in this subject and in this niche of the topic where there may be some, maybe not disagreements, but de-alignments of perspective that we can genuinely learn from one another on in terms of the opposing viewpoints, if that makes sense. And I really do mean this. Thank you for that answer because it's interesting to have the perspective of when you have these federal agents approaching your family, particularly your father, I gather, and these conversations do occur. I don't blame your father one bit for going home and saying, I've never seen it. Like, no, these guys we've been dealing with these guys our whole lives, and all of a sudden,
Well,
not to
not to mention, sorry to cut you off, but not
no,
to mention this same group of people tried to make a movie about my family, but we turned them down because the beings were actually going to be reptilians who eat people. So it's like at every level when our story is about to come out, there's these government people who come in and tinker it a little bit and they change it, and the truth of it never comes out. Or not to mention the fact that they dragged us along for 9 years with a Hollywood deal, which, by the way, Jordan Peele almost made the movie about my family. It's not a well-known fact, but now he's went and made apparently a bigger, better alien movie that's all scary, just like they wanted. It was going to
mm,
be a horror. It was the brothers who made The Conjuring, one of the
okay,
biggest horror films of all time. Excellent movie. I've seen it like 4 times. Loved the movie even before I met them.
right,
And yeah, they were going to make a horror movie about my family. We negotiated that for 9 years, and they've been yanking us around at every turn. These federal agents, these Hollywood people, and all of these experiences in my life, them yanking us around the way they have, trying to change our story to be dark, whatever, has led me to believe they're not honest,
right,
even publicly or privately. And the whole purpose of trying to paint this evil alien scenario is so nobody realized that it's them who we should be taking out, that we should be revolting against. It's the powers that be. It's these greedy little human people who are billionaire, trillionaire families, the banker dynasties, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and they create this magical little story about aliens to make everybody not believe it's really them. Because this is exactly what the entities told my father, these beings. They said that the people at the top of humanity are very dark. They worship a dark force, and they are going to deceive the world to believe that there is an alien force that is evil, and they are going to completely try to eradicate God or higher consciousness. And that's really what it's about. It's about the soul. It's about good versus evil. And my dad is one of the most famous UFO people on Earth, and we don't even believe in aliens. That's the funny part.
well, if I may end this conversation with that question. So if you guys don't believe in aliens per se, would that speak to the concept that these alleged quote unquote non-human beings are just a variant or fraction or fractal rather of the collective consciousness?
Yeah, I think you're trending in the right direction there. It's interdimensional phenomenon. They appear in our reality in a way that our brain can interpret and perceive. If people are in a negative vibratory state, they're going to see some really scary shit. If you're a good person and you've suffered and you've had trauma and you're at the end of your rope and you need a profound experience to turn your life around, and you're at that point in destiny when it's your time to really be activated and wake up, then the beings of light show up and they kick you in the pants and say, all right, you're ready. Go wake up, go do what you got to do. And it's a destiny thing. It's not a UFO, you know, it's not an abduction, intergalactic, blah, 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 blah. It's a very special realm. This is a realm where the soul comes to learn lessons, but we're approaching the age of Aquarius, which is all about waking up.
So would you to that point there, would you liken a lot of your perspectives, and I don't mean to put a name or a label on any of these views because I mean again it's all sovereign in the big picture of things in my opinion.
Sure.
Mr. Jacques Vallée seems to be on that same sort of or similar path at the very least with respects to information structures, his gifting fields hypothesis, if I'm not, or I think gifting fields, I believe. Would that be the sort of similar? I think that's the I don't know if there's a formal term for that, but would that be the path that you would liken yourself to?
No, I don't. That's a good question. I don't really liken myself to anyone's path. I've always been
Right.
very careful to develop my own beliefs. And the thing about Jacques Vallée, never met him, never studied his work. I know who he is. He knows who we are. Word on the street is, and when I say the street, I mean these clandestine streets where we communicate with these people behind the scenes. The word is he 100% secretly supports my dad. But, I'll believe it when these people come out and publicly support us.
Right, fair, very fair. And with that said, man, I want to thank you so very much for coming on the show. It's truly been an honor and a pleasure. And I say that because I must admit that you're one of the first, if not the first individual that's had not just direct experiences, and in addition to, of course, your family having it as well, but holding very and I mean this with truly in an unbiased sense, very, very intriguing perspectives instead of just
Thank you.
falling for the not I don't want to say falling rather, but instead of aligning with the whole, well, it came down, it landed in my backyard, and it's probably from another planet, and it was wearing this suit, and yet you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
I truly
Hollywood.
right. There we go. I
Yep.
truly want to thank you so very much, and if you could please tell everyone on my side of my show and my audience where and how you can be found, your Patreon, social media, all of that.
Sure. Thank you so much, man. This went by really quick, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
It's you can find me anywhere like Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, uh, even Amazon and Google Podcasts if that's somebody's thing. It's just Bledsoe said so. My last name Bledsoe and then said so. And that's it. It's super easy to find.
Awesome, man. Thank you so very much once again. And thank you to everyone who will be watching or listening to this once it gets uploaded and published. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much.